We go. Welcome to another episode of the Tapping into Life podcast. I am your host, Matthew B., back with another beautiful podcast to all of you wonderful people. And today I have the honor and the privilege to have a conversation with a father and a coach. All right, we got another coach here. Please welcome Mr. John Buckley. Welcome.
What's up, man? What's up, everybody? Super pumped to be here.
Good. So how we start off, we're gonna start as you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're just gonna smooth sail right in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, man, we could start from the beginning, like way back. So, you wouldn't tell by my accent, but I'm an immigrant. I was born in Ireland. I was raised here in New York City, in New York on Long Island. And I'm a father of two, a husband of one. And my main interests are business, coaching. I'm a huge sports fan. And all things that are like self-fulfilling, right? So self-improvement, spirituality, and my newfound passion, and I just crossed a major threshold last week, the world of sobriety.
Okay. So walk us through the moment to where you got to the point to where you actually what's how I'm gonna put this?
Like an
The
awakening.
light went off, an awakening, yeah.
Yep.
As far as your self-discovery and knowing your life assignment or your life purpose.
Yeah. So, it's kind of crazy because I think a lot of people kind of realize that at certain major milestones in their life, right? So, becoming a father, becoming a husband, starting a company. For me, all of those things were part of the journey, but was never the trigger to, this life that I'm living now. And, I got to the point with, my drinking that I was living a very successful life. I have a beautiful family. I have a beautiful house next to the Hudson River. I had a vibrant business that was making great cash flow. And if you looked at me on paper, you would think that I had everything that a lot of people were looking for, when in fact, there was a massive hole, right? There was a massive void missing. And I knew at that point it was time to make a change and really look inward, right? Because if you think about everything I just described, none of that is inward. That was all the outside world, right? And when I realized that no matter the car, the watch, the fancy dinner, the nice suit, like it was a fleeting moment of happiness, and that hole was still there. That void was still there. So once I stepped into that new chapter of my life of inner focus, spirituality, not leaning on vices to get through the day, and really kind of becoming a student of the game and just starting to absorb like the mindset and the forward thinking of a lot of people that I admired, and realized like that was the missing key. These people were pushing themselves forward, and in turn, the rest of their tribe was coming with them, instead of trying to push the tribe forward and leading from the back. It's so much more beneficial and important to everybody for you to be a leader from the front.
Mm. Yeah. I think the number one, and I'm gonna include we, because I also had to go through this process. The number one mistake that we all make is, if I have the material that justifies everything that I lack internal,
Isn't
you
that the
know,
truth?
you
Like,
know,
you can point to it, right? You
right,
can almost say scoreboard. You know what I mean? Like, I have the car, I have the wife, I have the house. What do you mean I'm not living up to my potential?
mm,
Right?
yeah,
And it's very simple to point to the material things. And listen, I still love nice things.
right.
I don't think there's
We all
anything
do.
wrong with having nice things, but it can't be the thing you point to as, the go-to, right? Like, it's really got
Mhm.
to be here.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of us, we tend to do that, and not realizing that you can have it all. Like, how many of, we look on TV every day, or we look at our phones every day, and we have these celebrities who, they making the movies, they making the TV shows, they're selling out arenas, they're making the music, they're very successful, but then you have uh, internal, it's a lot going on that's not working out in their favor. So in return, they're having these moments of addiction and alcoholism and just some of everything. One thing Robin Williams had said, before he passed away, you know, paraphrasing a lot of quotes he said, when you actually listen to his interviews with the journalists, he was basically saying that you can have it all, but make sure you right on the inside, because when all of that goes away, if something ever happens and all of that goes away, do you have the success and the wealth and the strength on the inside to carry you through these moments? And I think that a lot of that, of what he said, and a lot of what other people have said in that same situation, it fell on deaf ears. So it's like, you know, here we got a Robin Williams. We have other celebrities who have said that. I know Selena Gomez said that,
Mhm.
right before she stepped back into acting, and she had to get herself together. And one of my favorite comedians said that, that her father sat her and her siblings down and basically said the same thing, make sure you have it right on the inside, because all of this could go away in a split second. And, you know, even your average day 9 to 5 working people, we put on this persona like, oh, I got a house, I got a car, I got family, I got all these material things. But when it goes away, right? But if something happens to where, you lose that job, whether it's budget cuts, whether you're injured, uh, if something happens to where, unfortunately, that marriage ends, and, or your kids go away and they have their family of their own, what do you have on the inside? And I think that a lot of people don't realize that, because, a lot of us, we're so focused on having the material stuff that we're
Right.
not, evaluating ourselves. And I think,
100%. Like, if you think about the way we absorb information these days, right? It's through social media, right?
mhm,
And if you look at social media, you would think that you are so far behind the eight ball because you don't have the Lambo or the Rari, right? Like, maybe you don't have the gold Rolex on your wrist, and all of a sudden you think like, all right, like I am less, right? Because these people have more. And like you just said, you don't know the behind the scenes of these people, what their lives look like. And when it comes to celebrities, let's be real. I mean, pick up any, magazine or go to any front page website, you're going to see another celebrity in some form of trouble, some rehab, some issue, some arrest, some negative light. And it's because a lot of them haven't done the internal work. And, the craziest part, like, going back to my journey, like I tried many different avenues, right? Like AA, right? Which I think it's an amazing thing. It's not my thing, but I think it's a great thing, and it helps a lot of people. What I wound up finding solace in was I found a handful of people on social media. So like the one tool that like may be against you, like I found a group of people that exposed themselves on social media and said, no, like I was an addict. I was a drug dealer. I was 300 pounds. I was miserable. And I had all of this. And slowly but surely, you can go back and look at their stories and look at their posts. And you're like, wow, like he was 300 pounds with a really nice watch. And he was a drug addict with a Lambo. Like, I ran a company, a very profitable company, completely blacked out for the last 3 years I had it. And so on paper, it looked fantastic, right? But so what I did was I found the opposite on social media, which was fantastic. I found a group of people that exposed themselves and showed, no matter what you have, it doesn't matter unless you do the internal work. And that's the most important thing in my life right now is, they say I'm a cliche factory, but you got like when you're in an airplane and that thing is, you're hitting an emergency, they always say like, put your mask on first. Like that is so key. If you don't put your mask on first, how could you ever help anybody else? How?
Yeah.
And that's the mindset moving forward, right? Is do the internal work, the hard stuff, right? Like put the mirror up in front of you and take a look at who's looking back at you and say, okay, is this the guy that I truly want to be? Is this the guy my wife is truly interested in? Is this the guy that my children are looking up to every day? Because they're going to look up to somebody. They're going to see what you're doing. It's, and the deal, like kids, especially with kids, they don't do what you say. They're doing what they're seeing.
Yeah, they're sponges.
100%. They're taking it all in. Like, all right, you're telling me not to do X, Y, and Z, but like, you're on the couch. Like you're not exercising. You're drinking beer. Like you're not eating salads. Like you're speaking negatively into the universe. Like you're not throwing that positivity out there, right? And they take all of that in. So like, what are you bringing to your own household? You really got to do a self-inventory.
Right. So as I'm going through the process, it was a parallel thing, right? So I'm self-discovering myself, but at the same time, I'm defining exactly my purpose and what I'm called to do in this journey we call life. And so one thing, if you really put effort into self-discovery, everything else will fall into line. And so, and here I am, years. When I mean years, let me see. Last year was 23. Here we are 10 years later. And you have not just the podcast, but you have an entire LLC that is, in the process of conceiving so much to help everybody, like blueprint here, this plan here. But one thing I learned was the reason why people are so quick to go microwave, because you got your microwave thing, you got your fast food thing, right?
Sure.
And you hear these these psychologists that do public speaking. You hear a lot of motivational speakers. Everybody use the microwave theory or the fast food theory.
Yep.
That it's real quick, and you don't have to put any effort into chopping up the ingredients and putting them all together and waiting for the oven to get to a certain temperature.
Sure.
You know. And what I learned was, because I asked myself, I said, so why do people become so quick to go to the microwave or the fast food theory? Like, why are so many people jumping down that road? And as I'm asking myself that question, I'm also remembering that my grandparents got up 5 o'clock in the morning, did not get in the house till 5 o'clock in the evening. You know, my parents did the same thing. They taught me and my siblings how to really work and the definition of hard work, not just physically, you know, and prepare us for the working world, but also spiritually. And one thing I realized was there are a lot of people who want the reward, and they want the you know, that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but nobody wants to put in the effort and the work to get there, because they realize, you know, not only will there be a lot of joyful and happy and good days, there are going to be some uncomfortable moments and some uncomfortable times during that journey, which in return reflect things that they have to work on, you know. So when they have to work on it, it's like, okay, well, I don't feel I am built to take on what is detrimental to my health and well-being. And it is sad, and this is one of the reasons why, you know, the foundation of this podcast, you know, why it is what it is because we need to have a general conversation within ourselves, right? We have to address these moments to where we understand that if we do things that involve skipping around the work, this is going to be the result. You may enjoy what you see or what you possess temporarily, but that's all it's going to be. It's going to be temporarily. And then you look back and it's like, okay, I'm still empty inside. I'm still hurt from this person hurting me. I'm still, you know, bothered from the loss of, you know, I have spiritual wounds that are now infected, and it's affecting my mental, my spiritual, my emotional, because I have not worked on it. So now I got to go back and I got to peel back these layers and understand that had I would have put in the work, the things that I found when I'm peeling back these layers, I could have utilized.
Oh my God, yeah. My God, yeah. You know what it is like, people don't, until you go through it, right? Until you sit down in the hurt locker a little bit, right? And feel it. Once again, cliche, I'm a cliche factory. It's not this whole game, life, spirituality, sobriety, family, the whole game is and has never, ever been about the destination. Ever. It's 100% about the journey. And until you realize that all of the fun of life is not, think about it, it's not the first day, you know, of the, you know, on your tombstone. It's not the first day that's listed, and it ain't the last day that's listed. That's the destination, right? This is the beginning. It's the dash in between that represents the journey. Mm-hmm. And that's truly what this whole thing is about, right? It's sitting in the journey and kind of like discovering how you react to things, or how you're proactive on things, and how you can utilize yourself and the knowledge that you've gained from going over these hurdles to overcome the next one and the next one and the next one. And, has anybody ever given you something for free? I know the answer is yes. Do you value it as much as you would something that you worked your tail off to get? And that answer is never. Never. Right. It's the same, your analogy with the oven and the microwave. You can't tell me that cooking a delicious meal of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes and gravy and salt and pepper and everything, or, a microwaved chicken pot pie is even remotely on the same level. They're not, right? Like, one takes time and love, one doesn't. And it shows every single time.
And I always think of life like this. Life is that of our nervous system. It has no beginning, and it has, and even after the when I mean life, not the physical born, birth and death, but in between, because I compare it to a nervous system, because just when you think that there is a beginning and an end, it attaches itself to your muscles.
Sure.
Right? And so with life and everything in between birth and death, when you go on this journey and you learn, whether you got to peel back the layers and learn, or whether you learn it so you don't have to peel back the layers, when you get that moment and you begin having conversations with the next person, you don't realize that the fruit that you speak, the positive, loving fruit, the fruit that you speak into somebody else's life impacts who they are. It reveals so much about them. They can go on, the next day and say, you know what? Matthew said this. John described it like this. Oh my gosh, now I get it. And it changes their lives, and it motivates them, and it encourages them, and they see things differently. So you know what they're going to do? They're going to go and they're going to tell the next person. Yeah. And then they're going to tell, that next person might be a life coach, may be the president, may be a pastor or whatever. And they may be doing public speaking. And now they're saying these things that you and I have said. And now you got all these people following, and applying these things to their lives, So that's why I describe life as the nervous system, because I was born, and one day I might physically perish from this earth. However, what I put out will carry on. So those nerve endings will attach to muscles, and then those muscles attach to tissues, and those tissues attach to cells and to organs. And before you know it, what you've done impacted the universal being of life.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. No, it's the truth, and it does start, I believe very, very, very much so into the power of the spoken word. And like you said, if you can think it here, and you believe it here, and you say it out loud, like, it is real. It becomes real. And the impact that could have on somebody, the impact that can have on yourself is so immense. One thing that I've learned, as I've gone through this, is the importance of what we call stacking wins.
Mm-hmm.
And, part of stacking wins, it could be as simple, and it is as simple as you say you're going to get up at 4:30 in the morning, you get up at 4:30 in the morning. Win number one. You did not tell yourself that you were going to get up at 4:30 and you lied and you stayed in bed because it was comfy and cozy. You're going to get some reading done. You're going to get some positive reading done. I try to read, right when I wake up, I try to read right off the bat. Look, am I perfect with it? I am not. I would be the first to say so. Do I try to be? Of course. But you get some reading done, some positive thought-provoking reading first thing in the morning. Now we're at win number 2. You get a little water and a little hydration in you, right? Win number 3, maybe some exercise. Win number 4, a good breakfast, right? Win number 5, it's not even 6:30 in the morning yet. You've just stacked up 5 beautiful wins to start your day, right? What does that do internally for you, right? Now you are a winner on a roll. And that in and of itself, right, is not only is the spoken word so important, but also what you're telling yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes actions, right, speak louder than words, and your actions are telling your subconscious exactly the type of person you are, right? So by saying I'm going to wake up at 4:30 and hitting that alarm clock and sleeping until 6, you're telling yourself I have no worth in my own word. How impactful is that? How impactful?
Say that again.
Yeah. I'll give you the whole scenario again. When you promise yourself that you were going to wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm not, take whatever time, right? Like if you're a shift work or whatever, 4:30 in the morning, and that alarm clock goes off, and the first thing you do is lean over and shut it off, and you stay in bed because it's nice and comfy, right? You just told your subconscious that your word to yourself means nothing. You broke a promise to yourself, your inner self. What does that do for motivation, progress, momentum of the day, right? It's just, it's like a stranger or somebody you love just chirping in your ear that you are a liar. You lied to yourself, the most important person in your life.
Woo. Step on the toes, why don't you?
It's a tough one. Listen, I told you I'd be upfront and honest at the very least. Right?
Step on the but I've never thought about it like that because I'm and I'm gonna be totally honest. I'm in the phase to where I'm cleaning up the last bit of residue from having this relationship with procrastination. So it's like, they're on out the door, going about his merry little way, and so I gotta sweep up the residue, and I have those moments to where, okay, I'm going to wake up at a certain time on my days off. I'm gonna wake up at a certain time. I'm gonna do A, B, C, but I'm gonna wake up at 8 because I know if I wake up at 8, by the time 2 o'clock comes, I would accomplish so much.
Yep.
Here it is, 8 o'clock. Hit the snooze button. Now it's 8:30.
Yep.
And before you know it, it's 9 o'clock. You know what I could have done in an hour? I could have conquered the world in an hour. But because I hit that snooze button, and when you said something like that, when you said that, I'm like, this man is up here telling all of my business, and we didn't even have this conversation. So
bringing the mirror out, right? You're looking in the mirror.
Like, oh, am I doing? Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm not even gonna lie. I don't even know why I'm asking myself if that's what I'm doing.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and listen, look, I've been guilty of it for a long, long time too. And I think it's good to just recognize it. When I first learned it, it was like an awakening for me. I was like, this makes too much sense for me to have learned this in my late 30s. Like, this is the stuff, like, what I could have skipped? Learning, A squared plus B squared equals C squared in school, right? Because I've never used that. And for the engineers out there, congratulations. But I've never used, the Pythagorean theorem in my adult life But if someone would have told me this at a younger age, a younger me, maybe I wouldn't have listened, knowing myself and my thick skull. But what impact that would have to say, like, you are talking to your subconscious all day long. So be very aware of what you're saying to yourself, because it affects you.
Mhm.
It affects you immensely. And this goes back to, you can tie this into so much stuff. Trauma with adults and you as a child, like who was pumping you with positivity and who was not. People that grew up in a household where they were told, for lack of, you're good for nothing, or you're a loser, or blah blah blah. Like, okay, that's an outside force telling you that, and especially somebody that you loved or admired saying that to you will 100% affect you. But how powerful is it that you yourself, the number one most important thing in your own life, can literally dictate to yourself on a daily basis that you are not a loser, that you are a winner. And I will prove to you, me speaking to me, that you are a winner, because when I set the alarm, I get up. When I have to go work out and it's 20 degrees out, I go work out and it's 20 degrees out. And it sucks. Every bit of it. The wake up sucks. The workout sucks. And you know what doesn't, though? When it's done and you can look in the mirror and say, I gangstered that up. Like, I gangstered that up.
Ooh, I should have thought twice. You be telling all my business. But no. So I think that one thing I've realized, and I always have told people on several episodes, I've always said, after it's all said and done, I don't care what your story is. If you take away the details of your story, if you take away the hurt and the pain, if you take away all of that and you boil it down, it's acknowledging, accountability, and putting in the work. And one thing about me, I remember posting, it was like many, many years ago. I posted on Facebook, I said, look, if I got to hold myself accountable, I'm holding everybody accountable. But going through this journey to where, I'm looking back and I'm like, okay, did I hold myself accountable at this point in my life when I did this and when I said that? It's either yes or no. If it's yes, congratulations, job well done. If it's no, hold on. What did I possess or did not possess that caused me to not hold myself accountable? Because now that I've acknowledged the lack of accountability, now I got to hold myself accountable in fixing it. So now I got to put in this work,
100%.
And now I got to go and I got to do this and this and this. And oh my God, it's going to be so uncomfortable. Oh my God, doctor said I had to lose a certain amount of weight. True story. And so
we got that talk too.
It was like, okay, now I got to go.
He told me the amount. He said, yeah, you gotta drop some pounds, And I said, what are we talking about? 10, 15 pounds? He goes, about 80. I was like, oh, I'm a moose. Okay. Like, that's where, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't even like, in my head, it still sticks out of me that, like, I was like, are you joking yourself that you actually looked that man in the face and said 10, 15 pounds? Like, you couldn't tie your shoes on the way into the doctor, and you looked at him and said, yeah, I can lose a quick 10, and it's like, you got to be real with yourself, right? Like, I lost 75 pounds. And like, you don't do that by shortcut, right? Like, there was no, but that's like, it looked at the time an insurmountable mountain, right? But you start stacking the W's, right? You start stacking the wins up, you get your walk in, you take your water down, you take your supplements, you start liking grilled chicken and broccoli to some degree. Yeah, I don't think you can like it to,
Right.
The way I like a good Happy Meal from McDonald's. Like I'm not I'm human, right? Like, but stacking the W's, right? Like you said, it's accountability. It's self accountability first. The craziest part, like one of the biggest observations I've had on this whole thing too, which I find to be probably my most fulfilling, is when you do the internal work, when you do stack your W's, when you're going through this journey, all of a sudden you start noticing the people around you are going to start taking notice, and they start doing things that benefit them too. Like, I'll give you a quick example. Like the neighborhood I live in is probably one of the most old school, it could be out of Goodfellas, right? Like everybody knows everybody, eyeballs on everything, one road in, one road out, block parties, everybody takes care of each other, that kind of thing, but everybody drinks pretty heavy down here. And we all meet up on Sundays for football. And, I stopped drinking, and it was a shock to a lot of people because it was a massive part of my personality. But I went for the Super Bowl to the neighborhood party, and I would say probably 40% either one or two beers or weren't drinking at all. And I just found that so neat because it was like, look, I'll never take credit for somebody else's struggle and the work that they put in, right? But what I would take credit for is just taking the first step. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's what people need. Sometimes this podcast is what people need, right? And I'm going to venture to guess that that's why you started it. You probably needed it. And because of that, you internalize the fact that other people probably need a little bit of sunshine, a little bit of self-accountability, a little bit of positive self-talk, a little bit of help. And once again, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm going to venture to guess that's why you started it and continue to do so.
Yeah. You basically hit it on the head, getting to a point and that friend that nobody really wants to be friends with until they realize the value of that friend named discipline.
Yep.
Let's talk about it,
Yep.
And that discipline, you really take the time and listen to that discipline, and you realize, oh, this discipline friend, he got some sense. So,
without a doubt.
And he helps you. Discipline helps organize your good thoughts and your bad thoughts, and the impact and the effect, from the good thoughts or from the good actions and from the bad thoughts and the bad actions. And when you can organize all of that and just see from a bird's eye view of what your actions, good and bad, how they are actually impacting you as an individual, you'll be looking at them like, oh, no, some got to give. This ain't working, And when like I said, 10 years doing it, and one may think, okay, well, why is 10 years and you're doing the 10 years? Well, for me and my life, we got the things that hold so much value and impact, not just me, but so many other people in a good way, genuinely take a long time in my life. The podcast itself took 2 years to actually, for the first episode. And that was because it was a brainstorming, thinking, foundation building process. So, so the date that I actually launched it, there probably was an elephant born on that same day. So, a 2-year span, a 10-year self-discovery journey. But with that moment in the pandemic to where all of this stuff started dropping, and I'm just writing 2 whole seasons. I'm writing out every single podcast. I'm looking stuff up, and I'm like, I remember that I was writing stuff before I even thought about writing stuff for the podcast. So I'm going back into old journals and pulling out information and stuff like that. But when the revelations actually started dropping and how clear they were, and I'm applying these things to my life, and it's all working out in my favor, I'm like, you know what? This is some good information. This, I was like the positive version of a blog site. Like, oh, I got to drop this tea. I got to drop this gossip. Love will take you far. Happiness will have you get this. Word on the street is, if you speak positive, this will happen.
Right. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? Like the concepts have been proven time and time again, right? Like the concepts, I'm sure there's quite a few stories in the Bible, right? Like, the big book that can easily transfer to the conversations today, right? And that's the craziest part about humanity. Right. And now we're getting real philosophical, but like the craziest part about humanity is like, we know what to do. Like we all know that drinking too much is bad. Smoking like too much is bad. Eating too much fried food is bad. Not getting exercise, bad. I can go on and on. But there's not a person on the planet that really doesn't know these things. Like they're taught. My kids know these things at 4 and 6. They know what's good and bad. They know like sugar and not, you know what I mean? We're not drinking Coca-Cola. We're drinking water. Like they know these things, right? So we don't have an education problem, especially in America. We don't have an education problem. We have an execution problem. The execution of what we know. The execution is what you just said, our friend discipline, because it's tough. And people don't want to do tough things. And that's where we're at, right? And once you get over that hump, like you did, right? Like I can almost hear you writing all these things down and like prepping and over prepping and over prepping and over prepping. Like you probably had enough information and material to rock and roll after a month of writing. But it took you another 23 months, to launch, right? And the craziest part is that think about what you just said. You had all the education in the world. You had everything written down. You had past journals. You were jumping on. You had all this, that, and the other thing. You had a full script, but you didn't start the podcast because it was hard. It was a hard thing to do until you did it, and then you realized, I'm going to venture to guess, man, I should have done this a long time ago.
I'm gonna, because in that moment, to where I realized, oh, I should have done this, a long time ago. I was that type of person to where I did not want to be in the light, right? I didn't really want attention. But what I realized is because, the reason why I really did not want that attention is because that was an effect, that was an effect from trauma, from trauma being bullied in high school, because Bible Belt State, Bible Belt County, you couldn't be LGBT, let alone Black and LGBT.
Oh yeah, so, you were checking all the boxes.
And then during that time, the population was very small, so everybody knew everybody. And so, you go into school and you hear, oh, Matthew, and that dreadful F word, and it's like, so I was always in the light, and that was traumatic for me because it wasn't nothing good, For me, it was nothing entertaining. It was nothing beneficial. So my thing was I kind of maneuvered through silence. I didn't want to be in the light, you know, and even when I begun working in the hotel industry, you know, and they say, well, job well done, or you go into the comments on a survey, oh, Matthew was excellent, and you get the, you know, the boss dudes coming at you, go, good job, and it was uncomfortable. It was weird receiving that information. Like, it was just weird. Like, okay. You got about 5 more seconds, then you got to head the light somewhere else, you know. But I realized that because I was experiencing that trauma and I didn't know how to deal with it at the time. So that's why I was like, no. And so the reason, the moment that I realized what it stemmed from is because actually the podcast was supposed to be out. I did like a test run.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got like some podcasts, it's just audio.
Sure. Yep.
You got your audio, they do the talking, you know, end of the podcast. I did that, and I'm like, nope, don't like it, hate it, can't stand it, scrapped it. Like, no, absolutely, positively not. It's not gonna happen. It was the worst thing I ever could have done. So, but I'm like, but Matthew, you gotta ask yourself, why don't you like it? Right? You got to ask yourself, why don't you like it? And the reason, hold on one second. Hey, go. So, the dog. And I had, you know, and the reason I had to ask myself, like, why don't you like it? And then from there, I peeled back those layers, right? I peeled back those layers, and I didn't want to be seen in the light. Period. So that negated the positive moments from the past that I could have been in that light, you know, for recognition or whatever, but chose not to. But then on the flip side, wondering why nobody hears me, why nobody sees me. You know, it's like, it's not because you are incapable of being heard or being seen. You choose not to be heard or not to be seen. So you can't ask yourself why nobody hears me and why nobody sees me when you choose to. Okay, why did I choose to? Because this is a result of you being, you know, experiencing the trauma of being bullied.
Because when you were seen, when you were younger, when you were seen, it was a negative experience, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, it's like muscle memory, right? Like it's like if I'm seen, I will be called something that made me feel bad, or I will be talked down to. I will be looked at as lesser than, and I don't want to feel like that anymore. Mm-hmm. I can completely relate in terms of not, you know, being black LGBTQ in the Bible Belt, because I'm white and straight from New York. But you know, couldn't be more opposite. But what I can, you know, really vibe with on what you just said was, you know, I grew up in a very, like, you know, my old man was a, you know, work hard, keep your mouth shut, like, don't bring on any attention onto yourself. Like, no, like, you know, the one thing that I try to bring to the table these days for men, I run a men's group, you know, it's not a men's help group, it's just a men's group of, like, helping men find their tribe, right? And you know, what I bring to the table is, like, if you don't, right, if you're taught to suffer in silence as a man, right? Like, no one really wants to hear about your feelings. You know, real men suck it up, rub some dirt on it. And my old man he was the toughest dude I ever met. Still to this day, I've never met anybody that walked into a room that I was like, oh God, here we go. You know, he was a tough guy. He never missed a day of work until later on in his life. He was a very, very hard worker, but the guy literally was filled with demons that he never spoke about. And it wound up leading him to his demise from alcohol at age 54. And I watched that my entire life. And I never, you know, it wasn't until I lost him, and then many years later, that I realized, like, if you just have the ability to reach out and get help and just say, I need help, which the day that the day that everything changed in my life was the day that I finally realized if I said those words out loud, I need help. For the first time in my life, I felt free. And I think, men, whether it's what you went through because of, the way you were born, which is ludicrous, but the way you were born, the family that you're raised, your ethnic background, whatever reason, for whatever reason, we all have our thing that we carry, right? You have to get to the point where you can say, I need help. And when you get to that point, I think everything changes.
Yeah. Because actually during that time I was in high school, it was depression.
I'm sure.
Dark depression. Moments to where I contemplated taking my life, depression. And I'm sitting in an office with this therapist, this school-based therapist. Love her to death. And it, for the first few sessions, it was just so hard for me to open up my mouth and talk.
Mm-hmm.
It was. I'm like, these bleepity bleeps done shut me up. This daggone. I'm not. No, because that moment that if I say how I feel, that I'm going to be attacked. And millennials, fortunately, we were the last ones to experience this thing called toxic masculinity, right? So it was when we were younger, boys don't cry. Mm-hmm. Boys don't express their emotions. Well, you're now telling this to one of the most emotional generations that ever walked the face of this planet. Now, that may have worked for Gen X. It may have worked. And it may have worked for the baby boomers. But now, here these people are in their 40s and in their 50s. And they got to take so much time peeling back those layers because they realize, no, I as a Gen X or a baby boomer, no, I wasn't emotional. And no, that I was always taught as a man, this is how a man should be. We got to act like this. We got to talk like this. We don't express our feelings. We let the women do that. But we don't cry. We let the women cry. And it's suppressed and suppressed and suppressed to the point to where now you have the generations after that being affected because of how you were taught and how you adapted to that. So that's the generational curse that nobody wants to talk about. And here recently, within the past few years, it's now being highlighted as this is why, the suicide rate for men surpasses women.
100%. We're taught that it's better to end it than to deal. It's better to end it. I mean, listen, you just hit a topic. My father-in-law, we lost him to that exact thing about 2 years ago. And there's no doubt that it was due to the lack of, I'm not going to say ability because I don't want it to be a negative, but the lack of understanding that as a man, you do need help. And you do need a confidant, and you do need to vent, and you can be emotional. And, it is up to us and this generation to be the brakes, so to speak, for those that come after us. And, I'm not sitting here because I'll take that back. I am sitting here because I found people that were vulnerable and strong enough to put their stories out there. And I realized those are the exact people that I wanted to emulate and be like, because I grew up with this. I hate the saying with a severe passion, like be a man. Like you got to be a man. Like, I grew up with that. I grew up with it and I never understood it when I was a kid and I didn't understand it as an adult. I was like, so a man is just somebody who drinks themselves to death and everybody's afraid of, like, and never, like that's like, to me, what kind of existence is that? That's, and so I was lucky enough to find via social media. I was lucky enough to find a group of people that were vulnerable enough to put their stories out there, the negative stuff, the stuff that beats people up, the stuff that like we don't like to talk about, right? The struggle, and then show through hard work, because it does take hard work, there's no doubt, through hard work, vulnerability, a little humility, and a little, human aspect to it, that we can get through it and become a much more amazing version of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And if that's the one thing that I can give to this planet, like as my journey comes to an end, I hope a lot of people had fun with me. I hope I have a lot of good stories, but I hope at the end of the day, they said, look, that guy gave me an inspiration to better myself and those around me. And that would be a life fulfilled.
One thing that you said, and I'm in when you and I were having our initial conversation, excuse me, and one thing that you said, that when you said it, that was like a horse pill. And I'm gonna tell you, I found no comfort at all, swallowing that truth, that because of if I don't look like you and you don't look like me, we can't learn anything from each other. Mm-hmm. And when you said that, and I got, we ended the conversation and I'm pondering that, because when stuff starts poking, I don't, shoo it away. Oh no, I'm looking at it. I'm right. Like, what is that? That's the okay. He said this. Damn, that's true. So
yeah,
but and when you said that, and you said after that, they're gonna be like, well, what can me as a black guy learn from you as a white guy? And it's like, we gotta stop wanting to have universal conversations and want to feel included in universal conversations, but on the flip side, handle it or carry those actions or express those grievances in a very segregated way.
100%.
Because it's like we've been on here 58 minutes and it's like, okay, I'm jotting stuff down. He said this, he said this, he said this. I'm black, he's white, I'm 33, he's 30, whatever, I'm in the South, he's up north, but we just gotta get out of that mindset. If I don't look like you can't say anything to me.
Right. Like, what do you know? You know what I mean? Like, what do you know about my life? And the fact of the matter is, like, shit, we're all going through the same thing. We are. Like, we are. Like, we're all going through the same thing. And, like, are some people catching it worse than others? Like, yes, some people are catching it worse than others on my block. Some people are catching it worse than others in my city. Some people are catching it worse than others. Yes. But at the end of the day, you break it down, like, and that's the thing. And, like, this is a whole different podcast that we can go into because, I'll have to feed my kids dinner eventually. But
right.
The reason the country looks the way it does right now is that this conversation is not happening more. Mm-mm. Like if you looked at the media, like it's like we've gone back, we've reversed all the progress because it sells clicks and likes and media buys and commercials, like, the division and pinning people against each other is is what the media and those, in my personal opinion, those in power, Republican, Democrat, Independent, I don't give a, whatever political party you want to throw out there, we're a lot easier to control separately.
Mhm.
And once we all realize that, like, we're all kind of on the same journey, like we're all just living that little dash on our, on our tombstones here, right? And I agree with you when like I say, like, there's not one body that left this planet. Like, whatever we have here is still here. Everybody that's ever like lived on this earth, like we're, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Like, we're all still here. We're all going through this together. And if we can't open up our brains and our eyes and our ears a little bit and realize that, like, we can learn from everybody we walk by, right? Whether you agree with their, big picture political stuff or not, which, like, at the end of the day, who really cares? Like, is that really the important stuff? Is that really the important stuff? The important stuff is loving and caring, your fellow man. It's loving and caring yourself first, so you can, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So
Right.
filling your cup up so you can share, right? And really enjoying this crazy ride that, we're all on together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna let you go because I know you have to feed the kids, and my puppy is back there getting antsy.
Yeah, Nancy.
One thing I will say, and you hit it on the head, that where these type of conversations, they're not being had.
Right.
We'll rather dope somebody up on a pill, or deem somebody a psycho, and throw them in a mental institution, instead of having these conversations, not realizing that if these conversations would have happened, there would not have been so many people diagnosed with so many mental illnesses, because a lot of mental illnesses stem from trauma. If you go back and find the source, that infected root of that person's journey, you will find, okay, well, I understand why John was,
Sure.
it is on depression. It was on depression. He's on depression. Okay, he was bullied in school. Okay, he was bullied in school because he had red hair. And there was no conversation about, that was inclusive, right? There was no conversation that said, look, if we keep acting in a segregative manner, if we keep speaking in a segregative manner, if we keep acting, if we keep presenting ourselves in a segregative manner, and we don't unite, then these stories are going to continue to happen.
Yes.
Whether it's culture, whether it's race, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's religion, whether it's, north, south, east, west, it's going to continue to happen. Why? Because we, for some reason, like I said, we feel that I can't learn from someone who is a different gender from me. I can't learn from someone who is a different race from me. But on the contrary, a man says, I can't, hypothetically speaking, a man may say, I can't learn from another man who is a different race from me. But you learn from your mother, who is a different gender from you.
Right.
That makes sense, right? I can't learn from I can't learn, really get what my parents are saying when they saying this, that, and the third, but let Grandpa George say something. You know what I'm saying? Like, the contradiction, like we pick and choose what we want to say as a contradiction, and what we want to say, oh yeah, that's right. Like
100%. And you know what you just said ties it back to our entire conversation. And that's the bigger picture, is we all have the cross to bear. Do you ask for help? And then let's call a spade. Put the mirror up, right? And do the hard work. And if that can apply to losing weight, getting rid of vices, starting your business, starting your podcast, or in this exact part of the conversation, reaching out to somebody who doesn't look like you, who isn't where you're from, who you don't have anything in common with. Give that 20 minutes, give that conversation 20 minutes. There's 5 things right off the rip that you guys are going to be like, oh yeah, me too. Your dad was harder than you. Me too. You like sports, whatever it is, it's there, you know? And like, you know, we're in this great divide of, you know, left and right at this point. Talk to people for 10 minutes. You tell me that 90% of us aren't on the same team. Oh, yeah. Just grab people off the street. Don't say I'm Republican or Democrat or what are you? Like, what do you feel about this, this, and this? We're all just straight now. It's like, you know, we're all on the same team. Obviously, there's nuts on either side, and we can't help that out, right? So, but like if we're, you know, if we're really like being honest, like there's nothing that separates us. No. There's nothing that separates us.
No, and I think that there are 9 characteristic traits. And, you know, for those who are Christian, they call those 9 fruits of the Spirit. But there's 9 characteristic traits that if you allow your friend called discipline, if you allow that discipline to work its wonders and you apply those 9 characteristic traits, when you begin talking to people, you will begin to speak in a language where everybody understands. Yes. And it doesn't matter who you are or what you look like. It doesn't. Love has it does not discriminate. Patience does not discriminate. Kindness does not discriminate, you know. And so if we have those conversations and we allow those 9 characteristics to govern those conversations, we be on the same page.
Man, I think we just solved all the world's problems, buddy.
You know, hey.
Well, hopefully enough people listen to the podcast and watch this episode and take a little something with them, you know?
Absolutely. And that's what I'm hoping and praying for. I really am. But I'm not going to hold you up anymore. I know you have father duties to do.
Back to the next role, right? Onto the next little victory of trying to, you know, God knows whatever I put on the table tonight is not going to be good enough. So, but it won't be microwaved.
There you go.
There you go. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure and an honor and a privilege to have you up here. I really did enjoy this conversation, and I hope that everybody who is watching, that each and every one of you enjoyed this conversation as well. So we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you for taking the time out of.
I'm sorry, Matt. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, just as a heads up, there's my Instagram is probably the easiest. It's at JBuck, so John J Buck BUCK official. At JBuck official on Instagram. Feel free to shoot me a DM or a follow and a comment, and you know I'm very active on there. I'll reply right back, so you know it can be very interactive. And I'll obviously be sharing clips from the podcast on there as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh yeah, and I'm seeing you exactly what date, because it's like I'm just doing everything in order and scheduling the episodes in order. So I got to update the sheet.
No doubt.
I put the first half out, and I got to update it because I got like 3 more episodes to record, so plus yours, and it's 4. So I will be, you know, sending you all that information as well. So
awesome.
All right. So we're gonna wrap this up. Thank you, John, once again for joining us. And I hope that each and every one of you have a tremendous work week. Have a great weekend, and we will see you back here next week. Until next time, continue to always put your best foot forward and tap in. See you later.